Hello, good morning. It's Bonnie, and I wanted to pop in here and give you an update of what's going on at the Urban Garden Center in Pearl City. So, unfortunately, again, it is still closed to the public, but like I said before, weeds and plants wait for no one, so we still have to come here and work, weeding, harvesting, etc. So, it is a shame because this area that I volunteer in, the All America Seed Selection Garden, has never looked better. So hopefully we can keep this going. I have a great team of women who are so positive, and they show up every week to work. They're not with me right now because I'm here on a Monday, and normally we come in on a Wednesday. Hi, Canale. But anyway, I didn't come last week, so the weeds were busy. But so were the flowers, and so were the other plants. And one of the things I want to highlight today is about garden aesthetics. So you can go on to all sorts of things. Pinterest, especially, is inspirational, but it's also not a really good place to see reality when it comes to a vegetable garden. So I wanted to show you. Let me see. This tomato plant. Now, this tomato plant is, it was a volunteer, and so then when I planted it, it did really well, because of course the ones you try to grow by seed, they never do well. It is what I consider a cocktail tomato, so it's not a cherry, but it's not a real large tomato. It's indeterminate, that's why it has this rambling, scraggly look to it. And it actually has a disease that's really prevalent here in the gardens down here that we just haven't been able to get rid of. It's called late blight. So there's early blight and there's late blight. It has to do with early, and late has to do with the formation of the tomato itself. So early blight occurs when in the blossom stage. Late blight happens after the tomato has already started growing and is set. So if you have late blight, you can get a fair harvest from your plant before it completely succumbs to that disease. It looks bad, and so as you can see, this looks horrible, and I've already been pruned off early on the really bad looking growth, but it's just not really attractive. And I've already done a harvest of tomatoes. I'm going to show you these tomatoes, it took 12 days from green. So 12 days ago I picked what was available, and then in those 12 days I got an entire sack of tomatoes, good enough to use. So because we only come out here once a week, as you can see, birds have come in and eaten, and this is a clear example of birds. You can see that it's like how the beak has gotten in there, so you know that's a bird. But look at these tomatoes here. These have completely succumbed to the blight. And if you open them up, they smell really bad. Sometimes it'll catch it when it's still green. Sometimes some of the tomatoes will make it to it's actually ripe. So again, just because it gets this disease doesn't mean that you can't get a pretty good harvest out of it. So don't worry if your tomato plants look awful. Just know and try to find out. See, and it's so bad. See how light it is on the tip? It's no longer green, so that's chlorosis. So it's not getting the nutrients, right, because it's so diseased. So I harvested everything off of this. And again, this is one indeterminate tomato plant. Hi, Aiden. This is one plant, and I'm getting ready to chop it down because the disease, the late blight, has really taken a hold. It's been a few months, and that's about all you can get out of a plant that has been infested with the late blight. So I wanted to show you that scraggly, awful looking plant, I wanted to show you the harvest that I got from it. So this bag is full. It's full of tomatoes, and these were able to escape the blight and make it till they were mature. So this is about the size, and you can see, if you see that mottled, that's an indication that the late blight is in there. But it's a plant disease. It's not going to affect you if you eat it. This tomato is perfectly fine for eating. And so yeah, that is something that I wanted to highlight today. As far as gardening aesthetic, it doesn't have to look good for you to get a good harvest. So let's take a look at something that is looking really good. This is a local sweet potato, and it's doing really, really well. It takes this entire bed. This is one planting. This was also a volunteer that popped up out of the compost pile. So when I planted it, it was a very new transplant, meaning there was no chunk of potato attached to it. It's been growing for a few months, and now it's really taken off. So I want to get close. Some people, you know that the sweet potato grows underground. I'm going to show you. This is where I originally planted, and if you look, this stem right here is much thicker than everything else. So you know that's where it started, and then it rambles along. So already you can see sweet potatoes are growing here, so they grow off. I'm going to try to find one. I was explaining, and oh, here we can see another one. You see him right there? So he's popping out. So normally at where you plant the original plant, that's where you'll get a cluster of sweet potatoes. But it will grow in other locations as well. I'm going to try to find one. I saw one last week and I was showing somebody. But if you look along the stem, you'll see a little thing come out, and when it's the reddish one, the root goes down in there, and then you'll know that there's a potato starting to form down there. Sweet potatoes are a great plant to grow because it's entirely edible. So if you are hungry before you get any potatoes, you can eat the leaves. I think the nutrition is very similar to spinach. And you can just saute them or steam them up. I find them sweeter than spinach, slightly, they don't have that bitter taste, and I do like to just do the tips. So these tips where the younger leaves are, they're a little bit more tender. I prefer those, but yeah, if you can't wait to eat a potato, you can start to have some sweet potato. So you want to let the vines stay on. I'm looking for another potato. You want to let the vines stay on the soil so that they can tap down and make more potatoes along there. So this sweet potato is doing really well. It's pretty. On the mainland, there's a lot of ornamental sweet potatoes, so they're an entirely separate creature. They don't have any food on the bottom, and I believe that the leaves are not edible. But you can. Hi, Cora. So we're here at the Urban Garden Center, and I'm talking about garden aesthetics, and it doesn't have to be looking good. So this is sweet potato, and he's looking good. But this sad tomato plant over here had late blight, and it looks awful. But I was able to harvest that entire bag, and that's a large bag of tomatoes from this really scraggly, awful looking plant. So I'll do a quick walk around because, like I said, it's unfortunate, but right now this garden is looking better than it's ever looked. I know the general public can't come, which is a shame. So we've got this right here, which is called a couple of different things. it's a type of oregano. The smell is really strong. The flavor is mild. So the leaves are quite large and thick. They use it a lot in Trinidad, but it's a false oregano or Cuban oregano. People have different names for it. Absolutely edible. It's really easy to grow, and it's pretty drought tolerant. And so this garden that I'm in here right now that I'm working, I'm calling it the Black Thumb Garden because everything in here is either really easy to grow under really harsh conditions or volunteered, and so I put it here. And so if it volunteered in just as a throwaway seed, then it's usually pretty hardy. This is eggplant, and eggplant here in Hawaii can actually grow into a tree. It can just keep on growing and keep on growing. You can prune it back. We've already got some fruit off of that one, and then this one over here. So we've got that going, and as you can see, a lot of that false or Cuban oregano. This bean over here, it takes a while to get going, but once it gets going, it is fantastic. You don't eat the whole pod, you wait till you get beans, and these are almost, when you can hold it up to the sun and see the beans through it, then you know. But it's a type of lima bean, and it grows pretty prolifically. Bugs don't really like it here, although I see something here on us. But in general, it's a very tough plant. It's long-lived. It doesn't die down until you cut it down. And once you get it growing, you can get gallon bags, maybe 2-gallon bags a week harvest. That's shelled beans in the lima beans, and they're really pretty. It's called the Christmas lima bean. They're pale cream with burgundy speckles on them. So a great plant. Beans are really hard to grow here in Hawaii, and that one grows really well. And over here, these are quite interesting. These marigolds, they were an all-America seed selection, and last year I tried to keep growing them, and they would not grow. They would not grow. They would not grow. And I kept starting them at home, getting good starts from them, and then once I got them here to the garden, they just never took off. In fact, they never even got to this size. They were this scraggly looking thing that had one blossom and then it would die. And so what I decided to do is I took that one blossom. I think I had 3 plants that finally made it and had one blossom. I took the blossom after it had died, because if you know marigolds, in here is where all the seeds are. So after this dies, you pull this open and there's a bunch of little, like tiny little white and black stick looking things. That's the seeds. And then I just sprinkled it here. And it was almost a year later that these guys decided to germinate and grow. And so I can talk about seed memory and plant memory another time. If you guys are interested in learning about that, I would just put a comment and I'll do another live that talks about how plants gain memory and transfer that down to each generation. So these are looking fantastic. I left them in place wherever they sprouted, and they are looking healthy and just fantastic. So be patient. Sometimes you put out seeds and you think they're not going to grow, but they just didn't get the right conditions to germinate. And all summer long, this past summer, now there's a water system here, but it was extremely dry, very, very hot, windy, and the entire garden was practically empty because of those extreme conditions. These guys just hunkered down and waited, and then when the temperature changed and we got some extra rain, they just sprouted and took off. So be patient. Like I said, those seeds were probably in the ground waiting for about 9 months. What else is looking good? So these cosmos, they're volunteers that from the other cosmos that were doing really well. And this is the second generation in this location, and they grew faster. They're blooming at about half the height. The others grew to about 6 feet before they started blooming. These are about half the height. And so here's the seeds. And it's always good if you have flowers to let them go to seed and leave them in place, because they're food for a lot of creatures, and there will be more than enough that fall to the ground and bloom for you. So this is the garden. Some things are still coming up, and these are all the cosmos that volunteered. So this is where I got the cosmos from a couple weeks ago, and this is the sign that they are really happy in this location, and they're pretty tough. Look, that's that's the walkway, and it was just seeds that blew from this garden. They blew over here, and they all germinated, and they're already blooming. So we're going to let them go for a little bit because they add a lot of nice color. Yeah, gardening is a lot of patience, and this is probably the 4th or 5th time in here that we've tried to grow dill. Dill is a fantastic plant if you want to bring ladybugs into your garden. They're like a ladybug nursery. You can see all stages of ladybugs on the dill. But these dill have, from week to week, they get about an inch bigger. So it's very slow growing. I don't know what the deal is, but we're just so happy every time we come back and they're still alive, because we've had such difficult time growing dill down here. But if they do get a good root foundation, when they grow, they'll get quite large. And we just let them go to seed, and it's just covered with ladybugs. So hopefully by springtime these will be big enough, and I can come back and do another live and show you hopefully hundreds of ladybugs on there, because it is quite amazing to see all the different stages of the larva. And if you get really lucky, you can even see the eggs. So like I said, you want to bring ladybugs to your garden, dill is the way to go. So I've been rambling, but that's what I want to talk to you about, tomatoes this time, and show you some of the pretty blooms that were happening and the successes that were happening here. So I will let you guys go until next time, but I'll just share with you some of these flowers. Hey Lori, I've been at the Urban Garden Center here, and I'm just sharing. I rambled on and on about tomatoes and stuff, but I'm just signing off, showing off these cosmos. They're a volunteer that we retransplanted, and it's gorgeous day. It's hot, but not too hot. So the bees are happy. I don't see any butterflies, but there we go. So if you have any questions about any of the things that I talked about, or you want to know more about, just put a question below. I'll do my best if I don't know the answer, I'll look it up for you, because that's my job. And enjoy your folks' day, and have a safe week.